Imagine, for a second, the year is 2009, and you've sat down to play some Modern Warfare 2. As you boot up the game, you're treated to a beautiful main menu. It's clean, empty almost in its simplicity, but is immediately understandable. With a single flick of the thumbstick and the press of a button, you're into the multiplayer menu, and it's almost everything I could ask for. The moment you press play, you can find a game, create a private match, create a class, mess with your call sign and kill streaks, the barracks immediately give you an itemized view of your stats, and you can change the options without having to exit out of a multiplayer lobby. There's plenty of space for the level to be shown, allowing you to vote to skip. Whenever you hover over someone's name, you get to see their call sign and banner card they picked out. I'm not saying that Modern Warfare 2's user interface is perfect, there's a lot of little things that'd be nice additions, but all of that isn't the point. What's important here is that this UI, made 13 years ago, is really good and easily understandable. So what happened? First, I need to say this video is sponsored by Old School RuneScape, but more on that later. Secondly, with the release of Modern Warfare 2 2022, one of the most common complaints I've seen brought up is just how much of a labyrinth this UI is. Like, look at this, it looks like I'm logging into Netflix. Dun dun. There's so much stuff and clutter on screen that it's difficult to figure out what any of these icons even mean, especially if you're new to the franchise. There's no descriptors like there were in MW2, so what's the difference between Invasion and Ground War? The challenge screen overlaps the pre-match player list pretty consistently. There's no way to check your stats, check someone's showcase, so what even is the point of having 3 different calling cards? Hey, editor Stryxo here, they actually updated the game and included both of these things. In fact, checking someone's showcase is currently broken. Moving your mouse to the wrong area on the screen will simply boot you back to the main menu against your will. No way to vote to skip a map, so there's a 10% chance of playing this abomination. I honestly believe the best way I can convey just how horribly they designed this UI is by showing you the actual process of swapping weapon attachments on screen right now. This isn't even mentioning the fact that sometimes the menu straight up just doesn't work.
It's just join the party. How did you crash my COD?
Swapping a weapons receiver can sometimes boot you back to the main menu, and some attachments are just locked with absolutely no way to unlock them. $70, by the way. This isn't just a Call of Duty issue. Halo Infinite, Battlefield 2042, literally any modern Ubisoft game, the common thread between all of these games are people complaining about the UIs. And what's even more frustrating is that with most of these games, it's entirely possible to go back and look at an older game in the franchise to see just how much better the UI was. So a lot of major game UIs have sucked recently. Cool, but what's supposed to make a good UI? I believe I've narrowed down 3 things that make a good UI: usability, accessibility, and theming. I'm using Halo 2 as an example, a real shocker I'm sure if you've been on the channel for a bit, but I believe it does all 3 of these things extremely well. Usability and accessibility are pretty much perfect, usable in the sense that there's no issue trying to get somewhere on the UI quickly. I'm immediately able to tell where I am in the UI, where I need to go to do something, and the simplicity allows me to do something quickly without having a second thought about how the UI is screwing me over. It's accessible because imagining I'm someone new to the Halo franchise, as long as I have some form of an idea as to what a campaign, Xbox Live, or settings are, I can pretty reasonably navigate this menu. Navigation isn't confusing, is concise, and makes sense. As for the theming, this entire menu is beautiful, iconic even. It looks like an in-universe Forerunner terminal, every single sound being themed around this. Also, for anyone that doesn't know what that means, just trust me when I say it makes sense, it's themed very well for the game. Text from multiple different alien languages scrolls through the background, calm music plays as you make the decision as to what you're doing on the game. It's an overall welcoming experience, especially the loading screen that makes it extremely obvious when the game is loading, and doesn't just transition between black screens or still pictures that can sometimes be like 40 seconds long, making you question whether the game is crashed or not. Once you're in the game, the HUD is a masterclass in this regard. Later Halo games take this one step further by leaving a little overlay of where the helmet itself would normally sit in Master Chief's vision, but we're getting off topic. With an idea as to what makes a good UI, in my opinion, we can go back through older games and see how UIs have gotten bloated throughout the years. And while we're speaking of older games and older UIs, the one that I've always enjoyed seeing is the sponsor of today's video, Old School RuneScape. For those of you who have already played RuneScape before, I really shouldn't have to say much, but for anyone just hearing about this game, RuneScape is one of the most popular MMOs ever made. And released back in 2013, Old School RuneScape is based on the 2007 build of the game that is constantly being updated with features and improvements that players have asked for. What's important here is if you're a new player or returning to the game, for the next 6 months, Old School RuneScape has introduced fresh start worlds, allowing you to experience the game on equal footing with everyone else. That means a fresh economy and fresh high scores. For both new and old players, this is your best chance to get on and experience this game as people people did years ago. You can sign up for free now and hop into the tutorial world, and once you're done with that, you can choose to start in a fresh start world, and from there spend all of your waking hours exploring the world, grinding out the new achievements made exclusively for fresh start worlds, or just fishing, whichever you prefer. And don't worry, once the fresh start worlds event ends, you can transfer all of your progress and your character into the main game and continue playing. The link is in the description. Sign up now and go play old school RuneScape. While you play old school RuneScape, you can probably notice how the UI isn't exactly a looker, but it doesn't have to be. It is themed around the fantasy setting of RuneScape, but it's entirely function over form. There's an extreme amount of menus and options to get through, so making sure as much stuff is on screen and accessible at any given time is more important for this game than making it look good. This is something that a lot of older games share with each other. Unreal Tournament, Doom, Final Fantasy VII, games like these came with sparse, simple menus that got the job done. Theming was just a plus sometimes. I mean, we really don't even have to go back that far. Take a look at literally any Valve game from the 2000s. Portal is the perfect example of a 2000s game menu because it is the simplest example of it. Text over a moving background and some simple boxes courtesy of the Source engine. Portal 2's menu is a perfect update user interface-wise because it keeps the sterile aesthetic with these boxes, while fixing issues of reading small white text on bright backgrounds and the text actually scaling properly with the resolution so it isn't small anymore, all while improving the overall look and theming. Portal 2's menu update is also indicative of how the main menus of games were changing, with everything becoming boxy. Halo 1 to Halo 2, and now Halo 3, boxes. Continues into Halo Reach, Call of Duty 3, World at War, and then Modern Warfare, boxes. Everywhere, inescapable. Every single game was obsessed with boxes, and you know what? I'll give it to Battlefield because they were on boxes all the way back on Battlefield 2 in 2005. It's this obsession with boxes that really led us to where we are now though, because for some reason whoever is in charge of making UIs for games thinks every single thing needs its own separate box. MW2 is the worst offender for this because it is so overindulgent with giving everything its own dedicated space, and even then some of the decisions for the spaces given are simply baffling. It's so loud, obnoxious, and cluttered that it gives you no room to breathe. There's no wasted space. All of it is either an option, a moving background, or an ad, which is its own entire issue. From booting up the game, you are bombarded with a constant stream of advertisements, message of the day, a video showing off a game mode that I didn't ask to download, and a battle pass I don't want for my $70 game. This battle pass screen is absolutely horrendous by placing the most expensive purchase as the largest option, encouraging me to buy it, and then shoving the cheaper options off to the side. It's so predatory that I'm nearly left stun-locked at my chair while they try to walk me through their awful battle pass menu. Here's a breath of fresh air. Compare this once again to the MW2 2009 menu. Look at all this breathing room, and back to hell. It makes navigation infinitely worse by deciding that everything needs its own rounded off box. Usability is failed because of this, my test being me trying to change customizable options on my guns in between matches. Because of how far I need to scroll to look at different options for my sights, ammunition, laser attachments, muzzle attachments, I'm left to just use the in-game loadout editor because the match starts before I'm done trying to look at what gun I need to use to unlock some red dot sight I'm not even going to use. It's even worse if you're trying to change your calling card, clan tag, or profile picture thing. There is zero chance for you to go into this menu and come back out fast enough to beat the match loading up. Not that it matters anyway, because despite the option to customize your character and the weapon they hold in the lobby screen, it's a coin flip between seeing an A-pose blob of characters or everyone holding your gun, which means that your special weapon isn't showing up on anyone else's screen but your own. Honestly, why do we even have these types of lobby screens? Just go back to the globe spinning meta that shows all of the people connecting to the game as little dots across the world. That was cool. Accessibility fails because even though I've played quite a few COD games, this menu still manages to confuse me on more than one occasion. You can get lost so easily, and by that I mean you get to a place and exit it, then wonder how the fuck you even ended up there. A UI for something as simple as a first-person shooter shouldn't be a learning curve. There's nuance and an argument to be had for something like an MMO, but a first-person shooter being a mess of menus and options isn't acceptable. Finally, there's no theming to be had here. Not that COD was crazy on theming in the first place, but the previous games tried a little bit. This is just every previous COD game released for the past 3 years. Halo Infinite suffers from the box craze as well, which is so disappointing because they got it right 12 years ago. It's nowhere as bad as MW2 across the board, but the customization is particularly annoying because of how it's laid out. It fails usability because of this, and accessibility because as someone who's played these games since I was 5, this customization screen might as well be hieroglyphics. Theming because it's just boring, it's just boxes, it's nothing. Both of these games could have just copied Halo Reach. While we are on the topic of Halo Infinite, I can at least appreciate that the open world exploration during the campaign isn't cluttered with stuff all over the screen. The only thing that I could really do without is having a waypoint constantly on screen whenever you place one on the map, but that seems more like a personal issue. Not all open world single player games are immune to this though. While God of War 2018 still doesn't clutter your screen with stuff while you're exploring, something that actually set the original 2018 release apart from other open world games at the time, Ragnarok shows signs of making that worse. It's nothing crazy, but it's also noticeable in the changes made since then. God of War 2018's user interface took a little bit to sort through and find settings you wanted, but ultimately it worked, and I think the theming was incredibly well done. God of War Ragnarok simplifies all the traveling you had to do in the menu, but makes the menu extremely claustrophobic. Everything is so much larger and closer. There's barely any space left for Kratos. It's not the biggest deal, I know, it's super nitpicky, but considering I'm going to spend like 15% of my total time playing this game looking at armor and weapon stats in the menu, I'd like to not think about how this menu could just fucking zoom out a bit. What Ragnarok also does is introduce characters that don't shut up.
There's a brazier to the left of the chest.
Good
Maybe
bet,
you can
there's a couple more near here. Let's find them, yeah?
It's alright for the most part because I enjoy the company of the characters, but I like to play with subtitles on just in case a character says something I miss or don't understand. And I'd like to explore the world or enter combat without subtitles being on the screen 75% of the time. I don't need a call out when I'm on fire. I can very clearly see I'm on fire. The line was somewhat comedic the first time, shut up after the third. Elden Ring takes this idea of letting me explore without distractions a step further, and it's why it's the best open world game I've played so far, ever. I can actually experience the open world and discover it myself without waypoint markers all over the map, button hints when I'm next to an object, a health bar or item menu always on the screen, giant minimap, area designation, quest reminders, obnoxious compass, subtitles 90% of the time because my character won't stop talking to themselves. Obviously this is hyperbolic, but when you compare the experience of exploration or combat in Elden Ring to all the shit on your screen while you're playing something like Horizon Forbidden West, Watch Dogs Legion, or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I'd personally like them to take cues from Elden Ring. It should be considered that not every game developed might get the chance to take these cues from Elden Ring. I'm not really talking about stuff like the open world UI, that at least could be doable. I'm more talking about the game's menus themselves. While Elden Ring was no stranger to development issues and delays, it still got quite a bit more time in the oven than some of the other games I've mentioned in this video. Now this is just my assumption. If anyone has any other ideas or experience to correct me on this, I'd love to see a comment about it. But when a game is 2 months out from going gold and the developers are juggling 5 maps that are missing textures and geometry, 13 weapons that need to be properly implemented, 2 separate game modes that are nowhere near complete, a campaign that's missing 2 of its missions, and has anyone had time to fix the bug where your game crashes without fail on this mission if you accidentally alert one of the guards? I can see why something like the main menu isn't a huge priority. For as many minutes as I can rant about the user interfaces of modern games, the games are still playable for the most part. That campaign bug really was annoying though. But on a serious note, the actual game itself isn't really affected much by someone saying, wow, this menu sucks. While usability and accessibility are important for a user interface, theming mostly fluff, these issues pale in comparison to someone being able to become invincible by using a riot shield, or the game immediately crashing when you use tuned attachments. We are just now breaking out of the cycle of yearly COD games with this release. With the amount of development time each studio is given, it's honest to God a miracle we got what is probably the most solid COD game in a while, including like 3 new game modes and Warzone 2. Worth $70? No, fuck you, Activision. But this same sentiment can carry over into a lot of games released within the last 5 to 10 years. While yeah, you can take a title like Halo Infinite and go back in the franchise to look at Halo 2 and see that it was made within 10 months, not a good thing by the way, I just want to make that very clear, and came out with arguably more and better content and had a better user interface, making a game isn't the same as it was in 2005. It's not that games are explicitly harder to develop, I don't know if that's the right word. I definitely say they're more complicated and time consuming though. Publishers and shareholders get devs in the studio and expect them to complete a game with 3 times the scale and complexity with the same deadline that games had 15 years ago. All of this isn't an excuse. It can't be an excuse. We deserve quality for our money, but it's something that could make sense. Hopefully with COD being the main offender for this video and getting more development time now that there isn't one for 2023, this issue can be fixed. Will it? I doubt it. But if we start hearing about changes to deadlines in the game industry and suddenly we see the return of beautiful, impactful main menus, I think everyone will be happier. Until then, we remain stuck in the era of awful user interfaces. So good luck understanding MW2's new Battle Pass menu. It sucks. Consider subscribing, click on the video below to understand why Battle Passes as a whole suck, and follow me on Twitter until that site implodes.